Good morning, dear colleagues. It's my pleasure to welcome you at the Minister for Foreign Affairs. I know that our guests who have arrived to cover the Russian Arab Summit have spent quite a long time here, and you've had ample opportunity to familiarize yourself with sites in Moscow and other Russian territories. The situation that led to the current day, you're clearly aware of this situation. The summit has been in preparation for a long time, but when we understood that this exact week, including today, where the events were due to be started, would be decisive in promoting the agreements in regards to the Gaza Strip, the agreements that have been actively promoted by our friends in Egypt, Qatar, President Trump, of course, who also promoted his own plan, and we numerously and repeatedly evaluated it as the best thing that we could have when it comes to the possible negotiations results to speedily put an end to the bloodshed and to resolve the most adverse humanitarian problems of the population, which would allow thousands of Gazans to come back. I don't have no clue how they will actually be able to live there right now, but it would be better to engage them in reconstruction and reestablishment than leave them under shellings and daily threat of death of their children, death of their loved ones. So we are sincerely wishing for the success of today's event and today's meeting at the highest level in Sharm el-Sheikh, where we have a broad participation from around 20 countries, both from the Arab world, some Western states. And I hope that all the agreements would be abided by. We hear from among the ranks of Hamas and from Tel Aviv some claims that not everything is ready yet, and there could be some possible returnals to the previous situation. So I hope that the forum, with the support of the President of Egypt, the United States, and the leadership of Qatar, Turkey, would not allow for such variants of the continuation of the situation, and that they would insist on the ceasefire and the necessity to abide by the obligations taken by Israel in regards to the line that the troops would be withdrawn to, and the restoration of this beautiful place, the Gaza, which suffered greatly in the post-war time. And of course, the long-term settlement of this problem is only possible when abiding by the UN decisions on the creation of the Palestinian state, and we've noted that the peace plan of Donald Trump, only the Gaza Strip is mentioned, and it mentions the statehood, but in some broad and general terms, and we still left with the task of making those terms more concrete in regards to what will happen with the West Bank, because the two-state decision presupposes the creation of a singular territorial single state with territorial integrity in the borders of 1967, and this is just some broad overview of how we're seeing the situation. But I would like to underline that, underscore that we still are abiding by all the obligations taken as part of the member of the international community. So the agreement in regards to the holding of a special, very important event on the Palestinian issue was the subject of negotiation between President Putin and the Prime Minister of Iraq as the acting chair of the Arab League, and they decided to postpone the event, and I'm sure that the summit will still take place as long as we understand what time frames are more convenient for the parties, and the outcome documents have been essentially finished, and we'll still have ample opportunity to meet when you will come once again to cover the summit specifically. But our relations with our Arab friends are sustainably developing. The Arab League has established itself and continues to reinforce its positions as one of the key platforms of the forming multipolar world. And it's an authoritative organization. It is actively participating in world affairs, in economy, in finances, and more often we see them contribute to the resolution of regional and broader political issues. We have a sustainable growth of trade turnover with the states of the League. It has surpassed 34 billion US dollars. This is not much compared to the trade turnover that the United States have with the Arab world and the China has with the Arab world, but this number, 34 billion US dollars, it is significantly bigger than the volume of trade turnover that existed 20 years ago between our countries. So we are on the right path. I assure you that we have a positive dynamic of growth. We have a lot of joint projects which concern not only energy, not only oil and gas. You know that we are cooperating in the framework of OPEC Plus, in the framework of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum, but we are still sharing also our experience in the area of nuclear technologies, nuclear energy, non-energy applications of nuclear energy. And the flagship project, of course, is the building of construction of a first nuclear power plant in Egypt, in Al-Deba. Agriculture, we are also supplying agricultural produce and supporting our Arab partners. And of course, we have humanitarian contacts, which have become traditional since Soviet times. We had established interaction with so many Arab states in the area of education. Thousands and thousands of students from the League countries were educated in our countries and continue to receive education based on the provision of yearly quotas from the government of the Russian Federation. Tourism is growing in both directions, actually, and both our nationals visit your countries with great pleasure, visit your tourist attractions. They visit the countries of the Arab world, and the citizens and nationals of the Arab world countries arrive to the Russian Federation too, and we are happy to host them. We are implementing large projects in the area of culture, intended to popularize the achievements in that regard in our countries. We received great feedback regarding the Russian seasons that we are holding in a whole range of countries, primarily in the Gulf countries. But this experience is in high demand in other avenues, and of course we were very happy that many countries, many representatives from the Arab world participated in the International Song Contest Intervision. The performers from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, Egypt took part in this celebration of music, which took place on September 20th and received great feedback. And our Saudi friends, as you know, have already arranged and invited everyone next year to their country to hold the next installment of this contest. And we wanted to greatly support this endeavor and ensure representative Russian participation. So that's it for my introductory remarks. We have garnered great experience in the last 20 or so years. This experience allowed us to take the best things out of relations from the Soviet times, and I would like to remind you that the Soviet Union was the first state that recognized the independence of the current Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And the experience of those historical contexts helps us today, obviously, to be more confident in building our relations upon those established ties. And not everyone likes the partnership between Russia and the Arab world. There are some actors willing to play neo-colonial and colonial games, the divide and conquer games. We clearly know who has this habit, who still has this habit. But nevertheless, the main trend is the development of mutually beneficial relations based on the consideration of each other's interests and respect of each other's sovereignty and the solid balance of those interests. So I'm open to questions. Marina will be moderating, please. Today's event, which is the most relevant international agenda, the Sharm el-Sheikh summit, I have the following question. You have generally were skeptical about the success of this format, and I have a question. How do you evaluate the success of the ceasefire agreement? Could this be turned into a full-fledged process of peaceful settlement between Israel and Palestine? And does Russia intend to be present or joining this process? And an additional question, I went through the list of countries who would take part in the Peace Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh today. More than 20 countries on different levels of representation, the heads of state, ministers, and even at the level of embassies. Even the Japanese ambassador was invited to the meeting. Why is Russia not part of this meeting, despite it playing an important mediatory role in this conflict in the framework of the Quartet and in different other formats and bilateral relations with Israel and Hamas, playing a positive role in the freeing of some of the hostages? Why is Russia not present in Sharm el-Sheikh today? I can only point out that the invitations were sent by the hosts of the event, namely the leadership of Egypt, which harmonized directions with other Arab stakeholders and also with the United States. The Sharm el-Sheikh summit, even the Prime Minister of Iraq was not invited to the summit, despite being the current chair of the Arab League. Regarding the ones who will participate, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, mentioned that the main burden of restoring Gaza will be borne by the Arab states. It is their hope. And Japan is also playing a part in the reconstructions of some territories suffering from military activity, and perhaps there's some sense to that. As for the Russian participation, we are ready to participate in all and every format. We mentioned the Quartet that was destroyed by the efforts of the Biden administration, and which underpinned some serious agreements, including the agreements made in 2004, 2005, or perhaps even earlier, agreements of 2001, where the roadmap was approved of the Quartet in the Security Council of the UN. which outlined all the steps necessary for the creation of the Palestinian state. In a space of 1 year, this process would be needed to be completed, and the quartet did a job. The UNSC adopted this plan and approved it, and everyone knows what followed. All the initiatives related to this topic met the same fate. The Madrid Principles of 1999, the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002, which were welcomed by everyone and which didn't lead to anything. So when you're asking us about the prospects of today's event and the prospects of all these efforts that we of course welcome, and that was mentioned by the president in Dushanbe. So we have a certain amount of skepticism, of course, because so many times we've seen all those hopes for peace and the prosperity of this region of the world being unfulfilled. Moreover, we hear from many sides some skeptical forecasts. I've just read the statement by Mr. Netanyahu that it isn't over yet. Israel still has a lot of enemies and they needed to be finished off. So this, you can call this skepticism, or perhaps rather intention to recognition of intention of the offensive against the enemies of Israel. In Hamas, they also had some reservations regarding the turn of the application of those obligations. We've seen that this has so far been successful. The IDF has withdrawn to the arranged areas, and we hope that the participants of the summit and those dealing with the issues of the implementation of the Trump peace plan after the summit will consider that Russia would be useful. We will not be refusing this role. It is not in our tradition to turn our back. So we wish success to the summit, primarily for the Palestinian people to breathe freely. Mr. Lavrov, good morning. Representative of Iqbarir, the official TV channel of Iraq. How do you evaluate the role of the Russian Federation in putting an end to the bloodshed in Gaza, especially taking into account the fact that Russia denied the horrible events in Gaza? How did Russia influence Hamas?
The first thing is just refusal of use of force, agree with a coexistence, peaceful coexistence, and this is unnecessary. Compromises in any conflicts, refusal from bloodshed, and each side should compromise, and the Arab countries, and that would be shown in initiatives of Qatar, Turkey, other countries, following the results of the summit. They are going for compromises, and this is very important. And the other side, the Israeli side, we hope that they will understand the need for search of a balance. Not just setting objectives or targets, which would mean the elimination of any obstacles, despite the fact what your neighbors are thinking about this. And It's a very complex situation, difficult situation, but I just said that the root causes of this problem is the lack of the progress in establishing the Palestinian state. Even the growing regress in this process of creating a Palestinian state. I remember during my times in United Nations, probably 25 years ago, I talked to my Israeli colleagues and absolutely informally we tried just to understand how can we manage to find the way out of this situation, and I used to tell them on friendly terms that the most important thing for the region was for the security of Israel, including and security of other regional countries, was not settlement of the questions related the UN decisions on creating Palestinian state, including 80 years already. And my Israeli colleagues just told me that this is quite a simplistic position, and if one should think about in these terms, that would mean unsettlement of these conflicts. But the lack of unsettling this issue is the most fundamental factor which feeding the growing extremism in Arab world. Of course, when there was the outrageous act of terrorism on October 7th, 2023, and when Israel started its military operation claiming to eliminate everyone, and the then Ministry of Defense and some other members of the cabinet, some radical members, said that they claimed that there were no civilians there in the region, starting from the children of age 3, and we introduced for 5 times the draft resolution in Security Council. US side vetoed all these drafts, and the collective punishment of Palestinians continued. And once we talk about extremism, just imagine that not only one generation in the Gaza Strip is now living in the conditions of blockade, siege, besieged, lack of channels with the world at large. And what do you think, how the parents are trying to grow their children? What do they tell them when children ask them what was here before? Who is my grandfather, grandmother? And of course, in school, they are going to be taught accordingly. And you believe that these children who will be growing in the state of the utter happiness for the things that have been created for them. So there's no way but the creation of Palestinian state. How to do it, it's another question, but the mutual compromises are needed here. If President Trump's plan mentions the creation of Palestinian state, but it doesn't mention anything about West Bank. But if you look at the map of the West Bank, then you will see that beyond the illegal settlements, there is nothing else left there. And some would say that 2-3 municipalities should be established there for Palestinians, but it doesn't mean a state. And I don't believe that the creation of municipalities or quasi-state structures would be considered by Arab world and Palestinians in the first place as the satisfactory resolution of this 80-year drama. Some should have compromises, no doubt about this, and of course, world has been dragging on addressing this issue, just speeding up the creation of this state, and the quota roadmap mentioned by me 25 years ago would have been a solution to that. Last June, when there was the aggravation of the conflict and humanitarian situation in the Gaza sector, President Macron and Prime Minister Salma started saying that we are going to United Nations, and at the General Assembly we are going to recognize the Palestinian state. That was in June, and the General Assembly meetings were scheduled to start 3 months later. But if you decided to recognize the state, why should one wait for 3 months? Or they just hope that there would be nothing left after 3 months of bombings. Today I read the article of one politologist claiming that the West doesn't need independent Palestine, they need the ruled Palestine. I wouldn't like to believe in that, but judging by some actions of our Western colleagues, including British ones, they are going along this path, and the summit, in concluding, answering your question, summit, which is going to start today in Sharm el-Sheikh, is already convened on the basis of compromise basis, and initiators have already proposed some compromises, and we shouldn't play with the fate, but should implement what was suggested just to stop bloodshed, address humanitarian aid situation, restoration of Gaza sector, and in parallel we need to start working out on the plan of the creation of the Palestinian state. Microphone, please. There's no mic. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to represent myself, TV channel Al Jazeera from Algeria. There were several recognitions of the Palestinian state, and we do hope that Palestinian people could finally get security and independence. There were also questions on the Western Sahara. That applies to our country as well. What is the position of Russia to this end, especially in the light of attempts of Rabat to establish administrative authorities there? Our position is quite simple, especially the decisions of the UN Security Council how to address the West Sahara address, especially through the decisions of the peoples living there. Probably this problem has been on the table for 50 years. I remember Secretary of State Jim Baker was appointed special envoy on West Sahara. I worked at that time in New York. He met members of the Security Council, specific meetings with the permanent members, and all then confirmed the principle of established in a resolution on a referendum on the fate of West Sahara. And no one at that time doubted that needed to be done, and especially they discussed the criteria when elders should determine the fair rights for the vote in the various parts of Sahara region. So this specific scenario was worked out at that time. Then situation changed, and we know that Morocco, while not refusing from the principle of self-determination, believes that this principle should be implemented in a form of autonomy. For us, this option would be the option which would be acceptable for all would be acceptable for us, and the option which was established in UN resolution. The United States went the other way, and during the first tenure of Trump's administration, they recognized this territory as a part of Morocco. For them, this issue is closed. For us, it would be closed if not only one part, but all parties concerned indeed would feel that the decision was made on the fair balance of interests. The UN Security Council resolution is the only thing that we have now, and should we work out another UN resolution which would be based on other principles of settlement, then we would be prepared to discuss these initiatives if they are recognized by all stakeholders and parties involved.
Здравствуйте. Набила Насумы из Бахрейна.
Sergey Viktorovich, can you tell us, are there prospects of liberating citizens of Bahrain from a visa regime to visit Russia, exempting citizens of Bahrain, because we are now celebrating 35th anniversary of diplomatic relations. I was surprised that we don't have it. Then this is the mission on our side and on the side of our colleagues from Bahrain. My colleague Sergey Vershinin, who is responsible for addressing these issues, I would like to ask to deal with that, why we until now have to get visas to respective visits to our countries. We have wonderful relations in all spheres with Bahrain. Bahrain is a partner country in SCO, and it's quite attractive for tourists, Russian tourists, and the Russian Federation is also attractive for visiting from Bahrain. I believe we are going to deal with this issue. Good afternoon, Your Excellency, Foreign Minister of the Great Russia. I'm from Alegbari TV channel, Iraq. My question is about trade relations between Russia and Iraq. Today we have specific mechanisms in place which were adopted by Moscow and Iraq for developing these relations. And the second question is your assessment of the situation in Iraq and what role is being played by North-South corridor in promoting the development of Iraq. Traditionally, we have established friendly relations with Iraq, and we played, I believe, quite a constructive role after the removal of Saddam Hussein's regime. Our colleagues especially those who demonstrate in a tube with the powder, poisonous powder, which later turned out to be a toothpaste. Tony Blair is now mentioned in the context of the processes that are being started in Sharm el-Sheikh, Council of Peace, a technocratic body to be settled, proposed by President Trump to manage to govern Gaza Strip, and it will be headed by Tony Blair. He's been dealing with the Middle East issues not for the first year, and he was among the first to demand immediately to launch hostilities against Saddam Hussein's regime and Iraq under the pretext which was just invented or made up. During my tenure in New York, this situation was quite tense, and finally I'm happy that after all these tests and experiments carried out with Iraq by administration of Mr. Brenner, when they just prohibited practically all structures related to a certain extent with the bars structures, the fundamental state governmental structures for Iraq, then it didn't preclude that the situation when many officers from Iraqi army turned out to be in the other side's forces, and the government of Mr. Sodani and his predecessors have been quite effectively restoring the national concord or court in the country, which is quite necessary for any country in the region, be it Syria or other countries. And our companies have been working for quite long in Iraq, like Lukoil, some other oil producing companies. They pay taxes, ensuring stability of economic growth of the country, and to some extent taking into account that our companies are operating in Iraqi Kurdistan, they are helping create material basis for the national court. We have intergovernmental commission in place. We deal with many issues at various levels. I mentioned the telephone call between the leaders of our countries. We met at the recent General Assembly meetings in New York, and so we can be quite satisfied with the level of progress in our relations, and probably we should look further. Qatar independent journalist. Two questions. First on Iran and Palestine. Second question on Iran. Is it true that Russia made the implementation difficult? Implementation of agreement, of discussion of agreement on peaceful atom. Did Russia supply S-400 systems? And the second question.
Still, we haven't seen any measures taken against Israel, the actions of which led to a huge number of casualties during the conflict in Gaza. What is your position in that regard? I didn't really get the first question. Perhaps the interpretation was a bit late. What were those arrangements regards to the Iranian peaceful atom. The first question concerned the fact that Russia previously has said that Russia has previously undermined the prospects of a nuclear deal during the times of Rouhani. It was mentioned by Javad Zarif. And did Russia supply S-400 to Iran? And what of the deal with the Sukhoi aircraft? Have they arrived to Iran? In regards to our military and technical cooperation with Iran, we have no limits in regards to our military technical cooperation since the restrictions have expired, and we are currently engaged in the supply of those equipment that is required in Iran. And once again, it is all being conducted within the framework of international law. As for the statements of Javad Zarif, we have been working for the longest time on the GCPOA, and the final decision on this GCPOA was taken by him directly in his direct conversation with the then U.S. State Secretary John Kerry. And other parties didn't participate but just observed the deal being made between U.S. and Iran, represented by Javad Zarif. And we have never deviated from our position in support of this very deal, including the UNSC Resolution 2231. Everyone knows that. And I don't know what Javad Zarif had in mind when saying this. But the things that happened recently, where the West in the Security Council played a show, an illegal, outrageous show, and said that after this show, the sanctions of the UN against Iran would be reinstated, a pretext used by the West to the snapback mechanism, which is a unique thing for the UNSC, presupposing that any countries desiring to return some sanctions restrictions could initiate this process single-handedly. No one would be able to interfere. That's the very scheme that we saw, and this scheme was agreed with by Javad Zarif together with John Kerry. At that time, we were frankly surprised if our Iranian friends were ready to make this step and agree to this formula, which was a complete ambush, complete trap. We didn't object still. I don't understand why Javad Zarif at the time supported this sort of exotic initiative. Iran wasn't going to violate GCPOA. Iran was convinced that no one would force it off this way. Essentially, it happened so that Iran didn't violate GCPOA. The US left it, and Europe didn't abide by its obligations. And then they started suddenly talking that Iran should make new concessions. But once again, I'll reiterate, it's the creation of Javad Zarif. And also on Palestine, you know, we've just discussed it in detail, the heritage that has been accumulated in the region after the decision on the establishment of Israel in the Palestinian state. This is the heritage. This heritage has been becoming more and more explosive each year, and after the terrorist attacks on the October 7th, 2023, Israel reacted in a collective punishment for all Palestinians, which is, as well as terrorism, is a flagrant violation of international law. The hate that we are seeing from both sides is overwhelming. So this leaves us with the not just to believe that Israel can just say that we can just destroy Hamas and everything will be well. In your logic, from your question, follows that if we just pressure Israel, everything will end. In our opinion, all hinges upon the fact that we need to make deals because Hamas is a radical element in Palestinian society and radical Israeli politicians are part of the Israeli society. We need to find balance in our decisions. And the participants can influence the parties to the conflict to push them to this balance of interests. And as was mentioned by President Putin recently, we see that President Trump is basing his thinking on this very idea. Good morning, Sakhamir Yusuf, distinguished minister. As everyone knows, Syria experiences great violence and even genocide in different parts of the country, and especially in the coastal regions. We've seen some collective executions, kidnappings of children and women, and other horrible things. What does Russia do to put an end to such horrible practices and convince Ahmed al-Shara, the president of the transitional government, to put an end to this bloodshed? And how do you cooperate with Ahmed al-Shara after his seizure of power? And my second question, what is the future of the problems related to Bashar al-Assad? We have seen reports that there was attempt to poison him in Moscow. What is the possible results of this problem? Bashar al-Assad is safely with us on humanitarian grounds, and because he and his family were threatened with murder. We remember the fate of Muammar Gaddafi, which was such a pleasant surprise to Hillary Clinton at the time. She was extremely pleased at his physical destruction and was broadcasted live. And exclusively on humanitarian grounds, we provided shelter to Bashar al-Assad. He has no issues at the time, and everything is safe and sound for him. There have been no poisonings. If there were such rumors, I will leave them to those who spread them. As for Syria, in March this year, we saw some very worrying trends. And we provided the space in our airbase in Hmeimim for civilians and for some servicemen from the Syrian army to save them, to shelter them from the outburst of violence which was provoked back then. Which was unprovoked, actually, at the time. In Syria, we never went after our own narrow interests. We've supported the Syrian people. We have always been standing for the existence of Syria as a multinational, multi-denominational country, and we always supported the national reconciliation. And that was the case throughout the years when Bashar al-Assad was president of the Syrian Arab Republic, and when the United States essentially pushed Syria towards collapse when they supported the Kurdish separatism at the northeast of the country, creating trouble for the Syrian society and for the neighboring Turkey and for other countries where a Kurdish minority is present. We never did such things, and we always supported the speediest reintegration of all Syrian territories. After the December 2024 changing of the government, we are following those very principles. We are wishing for this for all the countries of the region. It is a very important region for the international politics. We hope to support the full restoration of territorial integrity of Syria, which is still undermined, both in the north, in the northeast, and recently in the south, where Israel started making demands in regards to the demilitarization of Soweida and all the territory south of Damascus. And this is a clear area of sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria. This is not a joke. Of course, we support the efforts of the new authorities that are intended to calm down the situation, and in that key, we have organized back in January the foreign policy mission to Damascus to inventorize the very relations that we had with the Syrian Arab Republic, and then we had a telephone conversation between President Putin with Mr. al-Shara. And in April, I met the foreign minister, Mr. Shabani, in Antalya, on the sidelines of the Antalya Diplomatic Forum. And in July, Mr. Shabani, together with the Minister of Defense and other members of the government, came to Russia. Just recently, in September, also a couple of weeks ago in New York, once again I met Mr. Shabani. We have a common understanding that the basis of our relations, which have been building for a long time, retains its actuality. But we need to take into account new info reflecting on interest in Syria, the economic questions, and the issues pertaining to the military and military technical cooperation. The Syrian side is interested in preserving our military bases in Tartus and Hmeimim, and that was mentioned by the president. We understand this interest from the part of the hosting country. Those bases could play a different role, perhaps, in this reality, not just as a military outposts, and also take into account the necessity of improving humanitarian flows to Africa. These roles could also include being a naval and air base, being hubs of redirecting humanitarian cargo to Sahel region and other parts of Africa. In the first half of September, we send a representative delegation from Russia to Syria, headed by the Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak, to work on our normative legal framework and also review our cooperation practice to make it up to date, and for the opportunity to discuss new avenues. Thank you very much, Madam bin Mohammed from Tunisia. Russian Arab Summit will be discussing the economic question related to the support of Arab countries. Will investments and partnership be discussed between Russia and Arab states, what countries are we talking about and what spheres are we talking about. We also know that Africa has a special place in Russia's foreign policy today. What is Russia doing to reinforce its position in the North African countries, including in Egypt or Tunisia? Thank you very much. We have, as I mentioned in my introductory remark, a sustainable progressive growth of economical relations with Arab countries. This concerns trade, investments, and if we talk about trade, we are cooperating in the world market of hydrocarbons in the framework of OPEC and OPEC Plus and gas exporting countries forum and being co-chairs of OPEC Plus meetings. And I would like to outline some agricultural shipments, including halal, grains, and other elementary products that our friends are interested in. I mentioned tourism, industrial cooperation. There are some prospective projects in the area of nuclear energy, including the use of nuclear technologies in the area of medicine and agriculture. Everything it's in an active phase. And also I mentioned the financial sector cooperation, the Russian Direct Investment Foundation with its subsidiaries with its partners in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and other Gulf countries. It's not just planning, but also implementing some joint projects on co-investments in the Russian Federation at with very good circumstances and providing great profit to our Arab friends. Was there anything else to the question? Yes, the economy questions. We have good prospects. Mr. Lavrov, good afternoon. How do you see the creation of international mechanism on the ensuring the ceasefire in Gaza? Are you playing a mediatory role between Iraq and Kuwait regarding Khor Abdullah question? Are you planning some visa exemptions for Kuwaiti citizens, as was the case in Saudi Arabia and other countries?
I think I've just talked about this while answering the question from your colleague from Bahrain. Of course, we're going to mitigate visa regime with other countries as well of the region, and if there is an appeal from your country, from Kuwait, then I don't see any obstacles regarding the relations between Iraq and Kuwait. They are gradually restoring. It takes some time for this process, and there are some obstacles which have been recently considered by the Security Council, and on this basis the mutually acceptable solution was accepted. And in the future, the UN Security Council would be contributing to the fullest possible normalization of relations between these two countries. These two countries are our good friends. As far as Gaza situation is concerned, what was the second part of your question? Yes, taken. President Donald Trump's plan, as it called now, of course, envisages, besides refugees release and withdrawal of Israeli troops to backward positions, it also envisages the specific sort of management during the interim period of restoration. Of course, there is a lot of work to do. We see it daily. The pictures of the fully destroyed streets and houses. How is this international body composed of? I believe that would be a trusteeship council, and certain bodies would be operating on the ground, consisting of technocrats, which would be coordinated to a certain extent by some countries, like US side said, probably Arab countries. So everyone has its own functions. So the division of labor and what is more important, those fragile formulations or language is not subject to revisions, and we hear daily about such attempts, like Israel is claiming that these provisions do not prevent them from restoring hostilities. Hamas believes that Israel is trying to hurriedly assess something, restore something, and Hamas claims that they accepted the plan of President Trump. So we expect a lot of maneuvering to take place around this plan. We are not going to stir up new aggravation around this plan. So we need just to concentrate on implementing this plan, backing troops, release of hostages, and so on. We will contribute to that. Is it Ibrahim, editor-in-chief? Mr. Sisi yesterday said that it is necessary to have the proper management in the United Nations regarding the implementation of President Trump's plan. How can we coordinate this work in the UN Security Council, especially taking into account that over this time they have failed to make some progress in this? And how do you assess the cooperation between Egypt and Russia? And what is the role of Egypt in this? The role of Egypt is quite evident, is quite clear. This is one of the most influential and active participants in conflict settlement. It's presenting its own initiatives, and today in Sharm el-Sheikh, President Sisi will co-chair together with President Trump, with the support of Jordan, Qatar, Turkey, during this event, and we rely huge hopes on that. And our relations with Arab Republic of Egypt are exemplary. In economic sphere, we are built in first in Arab world nuclear power plant, and infrastructure. In logistics, we are creating a Russian industrial zone in the Suez Channel region, the biggest ever economic project to build a hub connecting many countries of the region. We can boast of successful story of economic cooperation. Many economic entities were built with the participation of the Soviet Union. Also, we had the participant from Egypt in the song contest recently, and we have intergovernmental commission which regularly meets while working out new areas of cooperation and looking into the problematic areas which require additional incentives. And in the foreign policy area, Egypt is one of our key partners. In the North Africa region. We have friendly relations with all countries of this region, with Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and I do really hope that in Libya we will finally see the national court which they elect now. Good afternoon, international Algerian TV channel. Many countries of Africa, like Saheli region, are afraid of the presence of African militaries, which could influence the domestic affairs of these countries. What do you think? Is it possible? And would this African presence can commit some military crimes? You just diligently read what is written in your paper. This African military corps is the part of the Russian military Ministry of Defense, and the presence is quite stable and diligent. If you have any facts, then you should present them. Otherwise, we can regard this as the attempts to put blames on Russia in all deadly sins. You said that their presence could have some concerns for the neighboring countries. If you mean Mali, then our military is working there, are present there at the request, official request of the government of this country. We know about the tensions which exist between our friends in Algeria and Mali. These tensions are rooted in colonial times, when the African continent was just split by using the rule. Like in the southern parts of the African continent, with Rwanda, Burundi, Tutsi, Hutu, and in terms of Algeria and Mali, that was done with respect to Tuareg tribes, and all this comes up from time to time, and those who use ruler just to draw borders, they are trying to instigate new tensions between these countries. If you look at the map of Africa, you will see many artificial borders between these countries, and African Union at a certain time after decolonization considered this matter just to have a more logical delineation between the states, not just to cut in parts these tribes living there. And at that time, the decision was not to do so because it would open the Pandora box, and those tensions or conflicts would have covered all the entire region, and that decision was wise. And in our contacts with Algerian friends, discussing this problem that you mentioned just right now regarding the relations with Mali, and we are also maintaining the contacts with our friends from Mali. They are also trying to ask us to contribute to this process. The last question, please. Minister Fastan Fakih from Lebanon. First of all, to what extent is the US dealing with the peace settlement in the Middle East and unipolar world? We're trying we see that Russia is trying to change the situation. What would be your vision regarding the multipolar world in the Middle East? And we see the examples of violations by Israel of decisions of the UN Security Council. You said that on October 7th there was an act of terrorism, but what was followed the barbaric acts of Israel. We are referring to the position of Israel. You have the right to present your position, but the killing of several thousands of unarmed civilians could be called anything, but we believe that this is acts of terrorism. But the response of Israel, which took form of collective punishment of the entire people, is no less the violation of humanitarian law. I didn't understand what you were saying regarding the US plans. They are being implemented just right now. We wish all the success to them, with the understanding that once this plan is implemented fully and that we won't have any change of goals in the middle of this game, and we see the attempts to this end, and once this plan is diligently and fully implemented, we can proceed to the practical steps of establishing the Palestinian state, looking for a compromise solutions approved by the UN Security Council. Regarding the multipolar world, it's not that we are trying to establish this. This is the objective global process taking place. Just looked at the Gulf states. They, for 40 years, have increased drastically their political weight, economic weight, and immediately got the say in these processes. This is one of the polars in the multipolar world. The same is true for the African Union and other sub-regional structures, which to some extent are working hard and actively to increase their influence. The same in Latin America and Eurasian region. And by the way, our concept of the Eurasian security architecture envisages the participation of all countries and institutions and associations of Eurasian region. The richest, the biggest, the oldest continent with many ancient civilizations, and with the participation of Gulf countries, ASEAN countries, and with many other structures which are the part of this continent. And I'm pretty much sure that many Arab countries, despite their presence in African region, would be participating in this as well. This is the objective reality, and the sooner our colleagues from the West recognize this, that they would not be capable, for 500 years, of colonizing, killing, robbing, and so on, the sooner they recognize the need to take their equal, not dominant, but equal place in this architecture. Lebanon and Israel should comply with the UN resolution 1701 resolution, hasn't rescinded, and it just envisages the not use of force, military force, withdrawal of Israeli forces and Hezbollah forces to the north of Litani River. And of course, the violation of airspace of Lebanon and violation of territorial integrity of this country are prohibited by this resolution and not acceptable. There are a lot of other things required by Resolution 1701. Not many things are implemented, but we shouldn't sit idle. We should assist our friends from Lebanon in this, the longest suffering people in the region. From this Middle East, Riviera, or Geneva as it used to be called, it turned into the country or region which suffering all the time from crises, and we are prepared to contribute to rectify the situation, to overcome this situation. Thank you very much.